Within his cell, Shane listened carefully, preparing to make his next move. He knew very soon Merle or the governor would come back, and when they did, he'd kill them. Yet as he heard the footsteps draw closer, there was a rumble and the sound of a struggle. They had obviously captured somebody. It was then he heard a familiar woman's voice call out, "Glenn!" Shane waited for the next cry, but heard nothing else, other than the shutting of a cell door next to his. They had captured Glenn, and then they had gotten him. That means the woman he heard was Maggie. She must have been in the one to call for him. Shane attempted to call over to the other room without drawing attention, but to no avail. Eventually he would hear more movement, and this time the screaming of Glenn as he began to struggle with something unknown. Shane took this as his moment and began to bang rapidly on his door to get his guard's attention. As the door opened, he took his splint, stabbing him in the neck. Grabbing the gun, he burst into Glenn's cell, seeing him bash a walker's head in. Glenn screamed in anger, looking up to see a bloodied and beaten Shane. Shane wouldn't have time to explain, and would help Glenn up, and would go to the next cell, and help free Maggie, who they found with no shirt on. Another guard would come rushing down the stairs, only to be shot point blank by Shane. Gunfire would start to ring out outside, as some form of gunfight had started. Rick had come with Daryl and a few others, and were engaging with the governor's men. Shane would help the two over to Rick, who was in pure shock to see Shane amongst them. The two would share a look at one another, not knowing exactly how to act, but as one of Rick's group is gunned down, they would snap out of it and begin laying down cover fire. The two would work in sync, moving as they did when they were on the force together. Rick would call for Daryl, who was the furthest away. Making their way over the walls of the Woodbury, they would notice the gunfire stopping, and Daryl not with them. All of them would agree they would need to go back for him. It would be only a little over an hour, but after they get Maggie and Glenn to a safe spot, with Michonne staying close by to keep them watch, Shane and Rick would double back and save Daryl from some macabre fight pit the people Woodbury had been using that was full of walkers. Inadvertently, though, they would save Merle as well, as he was put in the same pit as his brother. For some reason Shane didn't know, but there was no time to ask or argue. They needed to leave there, and there was an angry mob at their backside. Dakota and her group continued to run through the woods. They had hardly any rest throughout the night, as they continued to avoid more and more groups of walkers. Over and over again they found more of the dead. South, north, east, and west, again and again. A walking nightmare as the dead continued to follow them. No matter where they went, the walkers continued to find them. They did not stop, they did not rest. The dead continued to move. She felt like she was losing her mind, Dakota thought to herself. They were being slowed down by the woman who was bit, but Tyrese refused to leave her. Midday was upon them, and they began to clear out the tree line, clearing a number of walkers. It was then Tyrese and Sasha found the dilapidated walls of a run-down prison. They argued on whether they should go in, noting that they had no idea what was inside there. Yet it would be a call out by Dakota, who noticed more walkers approaching, that would be the deciding factor. With no time to waste, the six of them would rush into the prison, unaware what would become of them. Glenn, Maggie, and Michonne would immediately protest seeing the three arrive back to their meeting spot with Merle. Glenn and Michonne would demand they just kill him. Maggie would suggest leaving him alone. Yet Daryl would argue that wherever Merle goes, he goes. That was his brother, and he wasn't going to leave him. Shane would also suggest either leaving Merle or killing him right there, but knowing that Daryl would either leave with Merle or worse if they did something to him, would argue saying that they should just leave now. Shane would scoff, saying he thought Rick wasn't the good guy no more. Merle would chime in, making a comment at Glenn and Maggie, only to be punched by Rick. Stumbling back, he looked up, ready for a fight, only to be kicked back down by Shane, who drew his pistol ready to just end it, but Daryl and Rick pulled him away. Finally seeing how much trouble he would be in, Daryl would suggest that he and Merle just leave together. He won't leave his brother again, and after everything Merle has done, he couldn't go back to the prison. Shane, hearing the prison mentioned, remembered his map he had drawn up. Then the reminder of Dakota still being out there somewhere alone. Shane would curse under his breath and quickly move to grab some gear. Everyone would question what he was doing, and he would stumble in his words that he was with someone before he was taken. A kid he saved. She was out in the wilderness alone somewhere. He had to go find her. Merle would chuckle, saying they tracked the girl into the red zone. She was either dead or worse by this point. Rick started to remember Sophia and the change in Shane on how fully set he was to find her. He was different than when he last saw him, nearly 8 months ago. he was more vulnerable. Yet as Shane began to think hard about his possibility of Dakota being dead and how long they had been separated, he began to slow down. His more calculated side was beginning to take over. If she wasn't dead, she was long gone by now. Too many days had passed with too much death around them. Rick would walk over to Shane to ask him if he believed there was a chance that girl was alive. And if so, then they would go back to the prison and he would help them find her. Merle would make another comment, prompting Daryl to push him and tell him to shut up. Shane then thought back on how he found Dakota the first time, and then again before winter. She had survived each time, both the living and the dead. Finally back to his senses, Shane would smile. He would then tell Rick she's a survivor, and she survived much worse. She's definitely alive. After some debate, the group would unfortunately split up. Daryl would leave with Merle, and the others headed back to the prison. Rick would then comment that Carl would be happy to see him, but would be silent when Shane asked how Lori was. Inside the dark halls of the prison, Dakota's group traversed the labyrinth, finding walkers throughout the cell blocks. Finally, they grew tired and entered what appeared to be a generator room, yet their continued bad luck would still reach them. More of the dead would come from the shadows. Tyrese would pick up his hammer from the ground, and he and Sasha would try to hold fast. Dakota herself would rip a walker down to the ground and drive her knife into its head. Then, when all hope seemed lost, as the horde began to surround them, bang! A gunshot would rock the room. 2 more rounds would be fired. They would all look to see a young boy wearing a cowboy hat holding a gun. He would scream for them to hurry and follow, leading them through the prison halls into safety as he gunned down more walkers. Exhausted and tired, they would all collapse within the cell block. Only before they could even thank the young boy for saving them, they heard the gates close and lock around them. Dakota would question what was going on, and even Sasha joined in at the absurdity of the matter. Yet it would be a one-legged man who explained that while it was right to save them, they did not know them. They would return with food and water, but until their leader returned, they would keep them safe there. Dakota would just sit back looking at the boy and the girl standing next to him and just say one word. Fuck. Alright, y'all, that's going to wrap up the Shane Lives Part 4. Honestly, really enjoy making these like little webisode short, little fanfics. And honestly, it's just fun. I enjoy it. As of right now, with how the story's going with Shane joining up with Rick's group, I wanted to do like a little parallel of when Rick lost Sophia, and now Shane's kind of going through that same thing, and that in itself is kind of like transforming him into a more, I would say, leaning him into more of a Rick parallel. Obviously, as the show goes on, Rick becomes more like Shane, and so forth. And so I like this idea of Shane becoming more like an earlier version of Rick, but he still has that I'm ready to just instantly kill somebody if like they cross me. And so yeah, continuing on with this Governor arc, I really like it. I like where the story's going. I expect more of these to come out kind of more frequently than my other fanfics, as each of these like short episodes, they take probably like honestly a third if not a quarter of the time to write and come up with, because these like 6-7 minute videos are equate to about probably 6-7 pages worth of writing, and that in itself usually 1 to 2 minutes equals a page as far as I've been aware. And so they're a lot quicker to come up with and space out than it is like the Game of Thrones ones, where I go deep into like 20-30 pages of fanfic before like each episode. So yeah, I'm excited to share more with you guys. And yeah, if you like this video, if you like this story, like, comment, subscribe, all the know-how and everything. So yeah, this is JD of the Writers Cantina. I'll see you later. Deuces.